Hi there. Eli, I'm just going over your video clips now. And some of these things you might already know, some of these might be new, but I'm going to go ahead and play this and we're going to go through the lunar colony on defense together. Here we go. And actually, let me turn on the volume here. All right. We're going to play this. We're going to play
Probably.
this. There we go.
Yep, there's definitely fair.
Let me turn
Mini
this down
grab.
a little bit more.
They have a widow? Okay.
Okay. So as far as us setting up, I know that you're trying to shoot down at the ground level. There is no way you're going to make like an effective hit here. It's just that Roadhog is so close range that this isn't actually going to help you whatsoever. If you can hook them, sure, because you are actually in hooking range, that would have helped, but you're not close range enough to really do any damage. Like, they can pretty much just ignore you. So I think your starting position needs a little bit of adjustment here. I think at this point, since they're pushing to get into this room, you have two choices. You either jump down and help the Reaper, or you have to tuck inside this room and wait for them to come to you. So it's really one or the other as far as choices go. So let's go ahead and keep this playing here.
I cannot aim today. I cannot aim.
Okay, so you know that the Farah has just come above. At this point, if you're on the balcony, it's looking for the Farah. I do think that she's in hooking range right now. And you're the only counter to Farah right now in play. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So basically, everybody else is going to have this extreme struggle as far as dealing with the Farah. Or I'm going to have to wait until I ult and deal with her. But yeah, you're the only one that has the opportunity to really hook her and reel her in. And so that's what I would have used the shield for. I think practicing your hook accuracy, you would have been able to grab her out of the air right now and actually pull her in and shoot her and finish her off and discourage her from playing. But
Okay,
let's keep going.
What is aiming? What is even aiming?
Get hog.
I might need
Moving
to
down.
stop recording.
All right, this position where the entire team is starting to move down, this is actually, you're ignoring who you counter right now. So the entire team is actually trickling down these stairs to this fight, which should have never happened, as everybody should have stayed on the high ground to take the advantage or keep the advantage. But it looks like they're going to the low ground to rescue the Reaper, which should have not happened. In this case, the Farah does just go around the entire team and go straight to point. That pretty much is your job to make sure that the Farah still is afraid to go close range to the group. And so that point is very close range enough, or it's enclosed enough to where you can grab the Farah. So I think that's something that will come in practice. I don't want to sound too hard or anything like that. I think everybody made mistakes here too, so I'm not just trying to harp on you or anything. But one of the most important things is when you're playing a certain character, you want to keep track of who you counter, and that's going to give you an idea of fights that you're going to be more likely to win. So let's keep going here.
Hog.
We have someone in point. We really need to back up.
Alrighty, yeah. So that was a good call about Junkrat saying, okay, we have somebody on point. Yeah, it was, if the Farah was starting to go towards point, then you needed to go towards point as well. So you had to keep track of her.
Get a point.
All right, let's see what she's
Back to
doing.
back to
So,
back to
yep,
back.
you're in the correct place now. I don't know what she was doing. She was hiding behind the wall, but that was a good hook, first of all. And yeah, okay, perfect. That was good.
Get down. Let's reset. They're going upstairs.
Good. All right, now that you're resetting,
Okay, Farrah's down.
She's like one hit.
it looks like you have the hook.
Me.
Missed the hook. So that's something that we'll have to practice with the hook accuracy here.
I need healing. There's a widow across the way.
And then also, if you look up top, it looks like the Widowmaker has a clear line of sight of you. So you have to be careful of that, of being mindful not to step into the Widow's line of sight, because you're also giving her ult as well. If it was an Ashe, you'd be giving her more time for Bob. If it was a Hanzo, you'd be giving him a dragon. And so this is what you really have to be careful for, is not to give them any ammo for this.
Yeah, she's gonna be a problem for me.
I'm gonna stop recording.
All right, no, don't stop recording because everybody's recording the same exact thing. So thank you for starting it again. Let's keep going.
Screw back up. Oof. Take care of the Farah.
I have ult.
All right, we have the
Farah's going for
Farah.
point again.
Farah is going for point again. All right, let's go.
All over the place here.
All right.
She's getting healed.
Yes. All right, so it looks like everybody backed into point because the main tank is now in point 2 and has set up. This is not really optimal positioning for anybody, but that's something we're going to talk about as a team.
Thank
Kill
you.
that Farah.
Widow's up top, left side.
All right, it looks like you were trying to hook the Moira who was ulting, but it looks like you grabbed the wrong person. That's okay. It did look like you got the Moira at first. I don't know if it's because your screen is so blurry or whatever, but it would have been nice to hook that Moira. If you couldn't, I would have said, since the Farah is in play, is that maybe taking the high ground with your character would have been a little bit better, because then you would have been in range to hook everybody. And so it would have been easier to hook that Moira from this upper balcony. Besides that, is you could keep an eye on the Widowmaker too and help out just a little bit there, as when the Widowmaker tries to take the high ground, you could turn around and hook her when she uses a grappling hook, or you could listen for that. And that would be a way to get access to attacking the Widowmaker too. So I think that would have been a little bit more helpful. The Brigitte is well out of position here. She has no support with the team because she went so far out. So that's something I'm going to have to talk to her about. But since you're doing the tanking thing, or the off tank, your job is really going to be, since you have a little bit more faster movement than the main tank, is you'll have to look out for people who are on their own a little bit more, or people who are getting flanked. And so those are some things where you can say, okay, get back here, come back, come back, come back. So a lot of times the off tank is really taking the job of minding the other members, while the main tank is minding the team as a whole. All right, so we have this Farah, and it sounds like the Farah is actually behind you. So your counter is behind you. Who you counter is behind you, and so this would be a good time to actually deal with the Farah, while the rest of the team can deal with the Roadhog and the Moira and whatnot. And so it sounds like the Reaper is actually dealing with the Farah right now, and when the Reaper could have been dealing with the Roadhog and the Moira here.
Sarah's not coming up soon. They have eyes.
All right,
Okay,
so now we're
yeah.
back on track. With the Farah, if she... Okay, she's down already. Okay.
Road.
Where's
Anna.
Widow? Because she still
Widow's
has
top.
eyes.
She's up in the middle.
All right, since the Reaper is dead, the Reaper needed to be on the high ground, but since the Reaper is dead, you have to take the high ground instead, because there's Widow problems and there's the Farah problem, and the Farah's going to be back anyways. And so this is why you need to make sure where you get up on the high ground.
Right here next to the point.
All right, we have the Junkrat going to the high ground instead.
Farah down. Doris is very low.
All right, that was a good hook attempt, but keep in mind that she's using her little crappy damage reduction ability thing, so she's not going anywhere.
Please go get her. Get that
She's
booty.
getting killed.
Okay. They got Supercharger out there.
Yeah, supercharger. Okay.
She's dead.
Oh,
Where is...
Farah is top right.
Widow's on the left
Widow's
side.
left.
On the stairs.
We need to answer.
All right, so we have a sniper in the hallway, and don't give her free shots now at this point.
For that Widow.
Yeah.
What's going on?
And that would be the time to tell the team, like, hey, stay out of line of sight of the Widow. Is that, yeah, everybody says that the Widow is a problem, but they're still in the line of sight of the Widow. In fact, they've actually turned their back to her, so you can see
For that Widow.
where, let me keep playing. Let me go back here. All right, so we know the Widow is on the top of the stairs here.
We need to
And then
answer
watch
for
the
that
rest of the
Widow.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody has turned their back on this widow, and so you're pretty much the only one here who is taking cover from the widow. So this would be a time to be like, guys, get out of line of sight. We're staring right at the widow. It looks like they're actually turning to chase the Farah. So you could have said like, okay, I'll get the Farah. You guys need to get out of the window of the widow.
What's going on back here?
Alright, Farah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So your alt. This is not one of those alts that you needed to use right here. So this actually was a waste of an alt. It's because the enemy team is not pushing yet, and you're actually pushing out to them. Since we're on defense, you want to use it when the enemy team is pushing to you instead. So right now you're playing this really aggressively, and I understand what you're doing is you're just trying to clear them out. And most of the time, your ult is not actually going to kill anybody unless it's an open room. So that part, you'll want to keep that in mind. But since it's not actually going to kill anybody, I mean, they're pretty much going to get knocked back and then they're going to take cover. And that knockback is really just to push them off point. And so I would have said is to save your ult a little bit. The Farah, once the Farah comes back into point, that would be good. If the Widowmaker goes into the high ground and is shooting through the window, that would be another time. But really, you just want to concentrate on using this ult to push people out of position. So, yeah, just keep that in mind.
Was
They're
a
all
Farah.
over the place.
So, yeah, this would have been a time, actually, if you were on the high ground, you could have pushed the widow off of the high ground, and then the Junkrat could have killed her.
Where's Widow?
Come back. Oh. Behind the barrier, behind the barrier.
Got Widow.
Don't stand in front of the...
So you see how they're trying to move on the point, and the Roadhog actually uses his ult, or the enemy Roadhog rather is using his ult to push people off a point or push them out of position. And so that's really the opposite of what you need to be doing. I mean, like, because he's coming to us, so he's going to use his ult to walk onto point, where you're going to use your ult to walk them off of point. So that's really the time to use it.
Barrier, please.
I'm asleep. Oh, fuck.
Supercharger.
Oh, thank you for that.
Oof.
Okay, healer down, Moira's down.
Oh, cool. I'm coming back.
I'm phasing
All
out.
right, let's go
I need to
back.
heal.
60 seconds.
They
They
have
have
eyes
sights,
again.
don't peek.
They're coming in.
All right.
I hear someone on the left side.
Oh.
Widow.
All right, I would say wait for her little gold body to wear off and then hook her. Almost. Nope, she went behind the shield. All right. Farah, how she snuck up on the team, that should have not been a surprise there. Is you should have been the one watching the Farah.
Oh shit.
Oh,
Oh no. All right, please tell me you hook her. Get her.
No.
Yes, perfect. Good. Do you take her out? No. So one of the things I do want to point out is when you're hooking somebody, you want to call out that you're actually hooking them. Don't hesitate, of course. You can be like hooking Farah, hooking whoever, hooking Sombra, whatever you got to do. Point is when you call that you can hook them, you're also getting backup on people who are able to help you kill them. And so usually it should be the hook, the right click, and then melee should do the trick. But just in case something happens or you miss or you panic and you use the left click instead of the right click, then it's okay to call for backup. And so, for example, if you were hooking like this and you were saying that you were hooking somebody, I always boost. When I'm Mercy, I'll always look at the Roadhog, and the moment that hook goes out, I'm actually boosting them, and so you can kill them a lot faster. And I do think that if you had called for help here, or you had just mentioned this, then people would be looking at where you were hooking, and I do think that I would have boosted you, and you would have killed this Farah right off the bat, so.
Alright, that's gone. Back up.
Yep.
They got that point. Come back, Sassy.
I'm crying, I'm trying. Oh, God!
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
needed
faster
a shield
sometimes.
first.
I thought you were gonna make it for sure. We need an answer to that, Farah.
Here.
We got... This is like... We don't have enough range.
Yeah, I'm more after the widow.
of the Farah right now.
Alright, I have rally.
Widow's top left.
Okay, well, they're collapsing my barrier like instantly.
Oh shit, I missed my
Widow
shot.
top left.
She's almost dead.
Go fuck her up.
Para somewhere? I hear her.
She's back left.
Yeah, see, that would have been another time, is that it looks like you actually did punch her, but since you didn't call it out, there was no damage boost or assistance. I think that the Reaper could have been able to shoot the Moira as you're reeling her in, too.
Yeah, can you focus her?
Oh no.
She's dead.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, so this, the counter all here, I do think this works.
Oh,
So this is good. I think that you need to call when you do the counter alt, because this would have been an opportunity for the Reaper to flank around. So if you were saying, okay, I'm going to alt now, the Reaper would have flanked around because the entire enemy team would have been looking towards you to try to avoid it. And so their concentration would have been more on you, and then the Reaper would have been able to flank their team and stop the push by getting the healers. So you hooked the wrong person here. The ulting Moira takes priority over the enemy hog because the Moira is ulting.
Moira.
I mean, it's good that you got him, but it should have been the Moira.
Oh my
They have Junkrat instead of Widow.
Oh, we're pushing up too far.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when everybody's pushing up too far here, it's too high risk. You guys got to get back up to the point. This is basically how we lost point A, is that the entire team pushed into a hallway where they couldn't see the remainder of point. And they ended up pushing on the opposite direction, or they had a Pharah that pushed in, and we ended up having to get stuck where we were attacking point while the enemy team is attacking behind us. And so we basically got surrounded.
Yeah, we need
I
that.
know.
Back up, back up,
I
back
just
up,
got
back
so
up.
many headshots off of their tank. I just needed to.
Supercharger's ready.
I can get it back. It
Gonna be
breathes too breathe.
Add the left here.
They have a Junkrat now instead of a Pharah.
Okay, so they have a Junkrat instead of a Pharah now. So now you don't have a counter, or really, since the Pharah is gone, your counter is gone. So this means that your playstyle actually needs to change too, is that now you're looking for a Junkrat instead, and so you can try to respond to that counter by moving yourself closer to the entrances here. And so right now you're actually playing long range with a close range character. So you need to start pushing forward to, you should be standing in this area here, or where there's that little wall on the far side here. You could be standing in that area. But since now, you don't need to worry about the Pharah because there is none. You do have to push closer to make sure that when the enemy comes in, you're more successful in grabbing the hooks. But also your damage is very close range, and so you need to keep that in mind. And when they have switches like this, you have to change the way that you're playing.
Great.
Why they switched? I don't know. They also have a Reaper.
They have a Reaper too, so that means that you need to start looking for the Reaper ult, because you have to hook the Reaper when he's ulting.
So I will.
I
Yeah.
think, and Reaper instead of Pharah.
I don't know. No, Reaper was the Widow.
Really?
Rag was the Widow.
Well, he's trapped
Reaper
right now.
top left, dropping down. Oh, he was gonna drop down.
Their tanks are pushing forward
Where are they?
in the center.
I'm just going around back.
Okay.
Oh no. Alright, I'm rallying.
Supercharger. Nope. Disabled.
Oh no.
Oh, baby. Oh, Nox, where you going?
I'm getting too
Anna?
excited. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Hog,
All right, that's good.
Alyssa, and reset.
Okay.
Great job.
I almost got my.
Oh,
Junkrat
tanks are
didn't die.
down.
All right, so you know that everybody's resetting.
Fun, 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 fun. I'm so focused on what I'm doing, I'm not calling out who's dead. I'm sorry. Oh,
I am dead.
the lot to
inside.
do.
Are they going top left or what? Where are they going?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Oh, what the heck?
Alright.
Where's mine?
Looks like they might be going mid again.
Again?
All right, if they're going mid, I think that in this case, if you had coordinated with Reaper, you could have flanked around with the Reaper. And it's both because you have self-healing abilities, or both of you have self-healing. So if you were up on this ledge and you knew that they were coming mid, I would have said to go around, go up the stairs, and start going in that direction. And if the Reaper flanked from the other side, you both could have pushed in there and worked together to say, okay, I'll hook the healers first. And when I hook the healer, help me kill them. And you would have stopped the push. All you need to do in order to stop a push in the point is to take out one healer, and that's it.
And somebody went bottom left.
Bottom left?
They had Reaper and
Reaper's on the bottom left. Reaper.
Oh, no. Should have hooked the ulting Moira first before you ulted. And then a push when they come onto point is when you want to ult. This is, you don't have anybody touching point right now, so there's no purpose in ulting.
Reaper.
You had the Reaper there, so.
Nope.
For example,
Oh, fuck.
when you're coming out of point here, that would have been the time to ult. And you notice the other Roadhog is now ulting to push people off of ult so they can take it faster.
Man.
Who's got an ult? Who's got an ult? Fluffs has an ult.
I have, but
You
I'm
need a
dead.
space.
We
Yeah,
should
you
be
need
on point.
You
So
know,
ulting right here would be the time to ult.
nothing in treasure.
This would have been it.
I'm ulting. No, I spawned.
I've got a barrier.
Please, oh god, please.
All right, so now that everybody's trickling into point, this really would have been a good time to stop and say, okay, they're halfway. Maybe like a second beforehand is to say, okay, they're halfway. Everybody just wait 3 seconds before we start pushing towards point. And so as far as that little hesitation would have meant that at least 2 people are getting into point at the same time. And so that's the most amount of hope that we have to making sure that we at least have some sort of chance to get point. Otherwise, everybody's just trickling in one by one and they're just going to get shot down. And so there's no hope of actually keeping point at that point. So this was already gone is what I'm trying to say. But if we held back at least for a few seconds to wait for somebody to respawn, we might have had a better chance. But that's nobody's fault. That's something that everybody could have done is held back or waited to go into point at the last moment. And I think that maybe it would have been a little bit more successful, but we were really struggling in this match. And so I think that after everybody reviews this, they have a little bit more of an idea of what they need to be doing. So let's go ahead and let this play out.
Fuck. Yeah.
Oh no. Yes, go Mercy. Don't res.
No.
That's it. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I do want to show you some things, so give me 1 second here. Okay, so there's 2 things that I wanted to show you in this little video clip here. Is the first thing is whenever the Roadhog steps out in view of the Widowmaker, he always makes sure that he has his healing ability available. So you'll notice right now he tucks himself behind the corner and he does have his healing ability available. And then watch when he uses his healing ability. So hang on, he'll step out. Here we go. Okay, so when he uses his healing ability, and I'll play this in slow motion here, his head actually goes back. And so when dealing with enemy snipers, be aware of that, is only step out when you have the healing. And his head goes back, and so it's actually really hard to give a headshot to Roadhog because his head dips back. So let me go ahead and finish him off here. There's another one. So it looks like that's how that's gonna go. But point is just be aware of the height of your character and where you can hide behind. Because right now, if the Roadhog goes all the way back to point, the Widowmaker this little ledge can block the Roadhog if he's like jumping or whatnot too, depending on the Widowmaker's positioning. Where right now I'm actually crouching, just so you know, is that if she's crouching, she can see under it, but if she's not crouching, the ledge will cut off the head so we can't get a headshot. But that's something you want to start keeping in mind when dealing with enemy snipers. So I'm going to keep this playing until he dies here. Alright. The next thing I wanted to show you here is that the proximity of your blaster, or whatever you want to call it, the proximity of your junk gun, I forgot the name, but the closer you are, the more damage you're going to do to the enemy. So I just wanted to give you a tally here of the potential damage. So I have the hook that will do 1, so it does like 1 little box here. And then when you shoot the Anna in the head, it does almost all of the damage, and then you finish them off with melee, which I know that you have an idea of how this works. I did see in your video clip you do have the potential to do one-shots with Roadhog. It's just that you weren't close enough to do that. So if you're right on top of them, you are going to be able to get one-shots here, and I just want to show you that real quick. So this is what it looks like when you can get that one shot. It is a little bit harder because the shooting is delayed.